Three. Hey everybody, we are back. I am super excited to have Jake Weeks on today. We have a great topic that seems to be really popular, or something that's near and dear to my heart. But first off, I want to give you our disclosure. This podcast is based on our tips, advice, suggestions, and definitely our opinions. It's also built on our own experiences, education, and training. What we are not doctors, licensed nutritionists, or dietitians, but Jake is a personal trainer. So that's why I'm excited today to talk about stretching before you work out. Jake, tell us a little bit about you, how to find you, and let's dive into this topic.
My name's Jake Weeks. I have a website, fitandhappyclub.com. That's the best place to reach me. I coach soccer. I've been a volunteer soccer coach, so I get asked about stretching pre-workout, pre-practice a fair amount. I was just asked recently, actually, and I had to retell my kids that the science behind it is actually pretty interesting and contrary to what most of us were taught growing up, or at least when we walk out in a sports field and we see most teams in a circle stretching together. Very common, but the science doesn't really support it. From a elongating your muscles perspective, it's very beneficial to stretch, but it's more beneficial to stretch once your body is already warm. You're going to get more of those elongation effects. From a time usage perspective, like if I'm a coach and I can have my kids learning strategy or even moving around, that's more efficient than the actual stretching. From a warming up perspective, like I just said, moving around and just getting the blood and the lymphatic systems and basically your body's fluids moving around is really what you should be trying to accomplish when you warm up, and is significantly more effective. They've done some interesting studies, and actually muscles, if they're stretched before exercise, can become weaker and become more prone to injury, which is completely the opposite of what we've been taught. So I recommend my athletes warm their bodies up through movement, try and get a nice sweat on. And then if they feel like they need to stretch, more of a ballistic, which is kind of a bouncing, kind of just get your body to the point where you don't feel like your muscles are tight anymore, as opposed to just a static hold, which would be more of a elongate your muscles, do something at the end of your workout type of thing to do. What do you think? Do you stretch before your bodybuilding workouts, or your?
I do. If I go to the gym, the traditional gym setting, I will typically just walk on the treadmill. If it's a lower body day, I'll walk, start really slow, probably about a 2, and then I'll try to get up to close to a 4 speed, just warming up that lower body. If it's and then I'll typically, especially if it's a glute training or hamstring training, I'll use bands and kind of just get the muscles firing, get that going. And I do notice a significant difference if especially on the glutes, if I get them firing and kind of put the brain with the muscle, connect that movement or that feeling. If I don't warm them up prior, I feel like it's harder for me to get things moving appropriately. Stretching, I absolutely love. For me, first thing in the morning is what I like to do, and before bed, mandatory. Flexibility is critical. I've had 2 back surgeries, so if I don't do certain stretches or definitely movement every day, I feel aches and pains and even numbness or tingling down my legs. So that's really important. If it's an upper body day, I'll probably do either maybe some light band work, or start off with some low weights and do maybe a set or 2 of whatever kind of mimic the movements that I'm about to perform. But I do believe, kind of like what you're saying, is, get things moving, not necessarily a static stretch before I work out. I do static stretches in the morning and static stretches at night, or sometimes just randomly, like if I'm feeling like a little bit off balance, maybe one side's tight or something or the other, then I do like static stretching.
Yeah, and I think that's important for people to differentiate between when your body's just feeling tight and you just kind of do this thing to make sure that the next time you do it, you don't feel really stiff when you do it, versus purposely trying to elongate your muscles where you would have to hold it for a certain amount of time, and where it's really beneficial to do when your body's already warmed up, and you're way more likely to actually achieve success in elongating your muscles. So I think, like what you said, it's important first thing when you get up to get those fluids flowing, to get that sniffness out of your body. Like the fluids will really rest in certain parts of your body, and you got to move to get it moving around so that it's not collecting. And then before bed's a great idea. You got all that tension built up from a day's worth of movement. Great idea to kind of stretch and relax that out. I like that routine.
Yeah, because you have to be mindful of it. You have to block out the time for it, and it doesn't take long. The static stretching, I try to do anywhere from 20 seconds to a 60-second hold. And honestly, I have to set my timer. Actually, I watch a stopwatch on my phone. Because if I don't, then I kind of rush through it. And if I set the timer down, or the stopwatch, I like the stopwatch. If I set the stopwatch down, kind of look at that, focus on that, and then kind of focus back to breathing, and maybe even kind of moving the muscles around and trying to make sure that everything is balanced. Because I know, and that's something that keeps popping up in Power Up, the Facebook group, is people feeling aches and pains, and maybe performing a plank or doing squats or doing lunges. I hear quite often people posting about little aches and pains in joints. And really, I think that if you're stretching your muscles and warming them up in proper form, obviously, you can avoid injury and a lot of those aches and pains. And just like my lower back, if I don't do movement or proper stretchings every day, I have numbness and tingling down my leg. But if I stretch and warm up and move every day, I can get rid of that. In fact, this is one of my favorite things for my lower back. I'll lay on this on each side every single morning. It seems simple. It's just a tennis ball, but I sit there and lay and work each side and just kind of like move around until it kind of hurts, but in a good hurt. It feels good. It's like a lower back massage. And then this is my best friend for my quads. And then hamstrings, I love foam rolling. So, and sometimes I fit those in wherever I can. Typically it's after a workout is when I do these type of devices and tools. So
you'll see that being used a lot before workouts in professional teams. Very, very popular, increasingly popular. A lot more of that sort of myofascial release, or just loosening up the muscles, more than you'll see static stretching, it seems like.
Yeah, but I think, imbalances are critical. I think that, I see a lot of people that are like, oh, I have this ache or pain or tightness on one side. And sometimes, that might be because you're sleeping on one side all night long, or it could be maybe you are tight on one side and you're working out and not fixing that, and your body might be compensating for that.
Yeah, well, most people honestly have like a tightness on one side. I talked to a chiropractor that says the vast majority of people have one leg that's kind of longer than the other, where the muscles have kind of tightened up on that side over here. And I can feel it in my own body, and that leads to an uneven gait, where you take one step that's a little longer than the other step. I mean, there's lots of signs, and almost everybody has that imbalance. That's where gaits come from. So that's a good point. It's something for people to be aware of and try to fix. And like you said, alignment's the best thing that those people can do for their joints, and strengthening, stretching, and just moving them. A lot of those joints don't get moved a lot. A lot of people don't get full range of motion in all their joints every day. In fact, most people don't. And that's one of the easiest things you can do, is just move your shoulder through its full range of motion, move your hips, sit down in a squat every day for a few seconds even. A lot of people can't even squat or don't squat during a day. So
I think you bring up a good point, though. If you stretch before a workout, you're getting the muscles in, not necessarily static stretch, not stretching it too much, but if you get things moving and flowing, you will get a proper range of motion. And what that means is if you're watching this and you're hearing that and you're like, what does that mean exactly? Chest press is a great example. I see people all the time in the gym doing chest presses, but they're only doing like this small movement. You're not actually going full range and getting the full benefit. Proper stretching, proper movement, proper form, and really choosing the right amount of weight.
Yeah. Full range of motion is another thing we'll have to talk about, but science is pretty clear. That's the most effective way to lift.
Right. Keeping from those imbalances, so Stretching before workout, I think, you know, educating yourself, maybe not necessarily a static stretch. I think we can agree on that. Um, yeah, but you know, it is funny that you mentioned that when we first started this conversation about how we were taught. And when you said that, man, I had this flash of like junior high.
Hmm. Well, I have these kids in junior high that I coach now. They're like, why aren't we stretching like the teams? I have parents. They're like, I really think we should stretch like the other teams. You know, I'm like, well, the science just, we could be a lot more efficient with that 10 minutes of time. I promise you.
Yeah, yeah. So we do need to do another podcast about post-workout stretching, and we will. We'll cut that here soon. But I do believe that we agree, right, that you need to add some movement or whatever, some blood flow to the muscles prior to workout, but not necessarily spend a lot of time on that.
And stretching is good for you. It just isn't that important before you do a workout or athletic event. Not nearly as important as we've been taught. If you really want to incorporate in your workout afterwards, it's going to be a lot more effective, honestly. Any kind of like ballistic stretching where you're just getting your body prepared for the types of motions it might have to go through during the game, that's definitely a great idea. But prolonged
Right,
static stretching, not necessary. In fact, potentially detrimental.
right, right. Yeah. So get those muscles firing, starting off with a low weight, maybe, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Low
Bands,
weight,
bands.
little resistance. Yeah, just high reps. You just get the muscle moving and sweat pouring and blood flowing.
I don't sweat when I work out. Do you sweat when you work out?
I mean, if I'm just going to like bench or something, I don't sweat that much. It depends how much I'm going from one thing to the next and how intense it is. But if I'm playing basketball or something and I want to perform well, or if I, have to do one sort of explosive max lift or something, then yeah, I'm going to get a nice sweat on before I go and really try and perform.
Cool. So Jake, tell us briefly before we hang up how to get a hold of you again, what you love to do, what you're passionate about as far as working with certain individuals, and then we'll take off.
Thanks. Fitandhappyclub.com. I like to apply the latest science to my workouts. It's changing all the time. And I like to make workouts fun, hence the Fit and Happy Club part.
Yeah.
I like to incorporate MMA and balance trainers and suspension trainers and games and sports and all kinds of things. So give me a call if you're interested, 509-720-6823 or fitandhappyclub.com. Thanks, Kat.
Yeah, I know that you work with a lot of families too, which is really cool. You know, to get the family together and do some personal training sessions one-on-one with you. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic, and I really advocate for that. Is, you know, yeah, you might want to get healthy, but why don't we work on the whole family dynamic? So I think that's beautiful, and yeah, so definitely, I'll put the link below, and so you can get a hold of Jake.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.